Thanks for having us here today. So we're just going to go over a quick essential checklist for health and safety on the farm. So as far as their employer responsibilities, we need to provide a safe workplace, provide training, tell employees about hazards on the farm, train employees to recognize other hazards, put hazard control methods in place, provide PPE, and show workers how to properly use it, and provide first aid supplies. And what we sort of push back on our farmers is a lot of farmers will say, well, I have all of this stuff in place. If it's not documented and you can't prove it, it really doesn't exist. So where we start with our farmers is the Health and Safety Board. This is kind of the first resource that you need to do. And actually a lot of the things in you guys' vault would directly apply to getting posted on here. The first year or so that I started doing this, we were just sending resources to our farmers and saying, here's the information. This is everything you need to do. And what I sort of found is all the farmers we work with, or most of them at least, are generally overwhelmed and don't have extra time to tackle these sort of projects. So if somebody like me or Josh can hop in, we can create an entire package and send it to you. And if that isn't quite enough support, we'll actually come out to the farm, make sure everything's posted with your specific information. As far as general safety training, at a minimum for the farmers we support, we do WHMIS, workplace violence and harassment, and health and safety awareness for their employees annually. So as far as WHMIS, it's just going over the chemicals that you're using on farm. And some farmers might say, well, we're not using too many, but even if we look at the acid and the water, any sort of other additives or the cleaners that you're using, some of those are quite aggressive, and we should have something in place just to make sure that the employees know what they're dealing with. From there, we go on to violence and harassment. Typically, most farmers flinch when you talk about this training, but we try to keep it fun and light, just sort of talking about what we're allowed to do, how we can still have fun on the farm while being conscious of everything in the industry today. As far as health and safety awareness training, this is one of my favorite courses to run because this is sort of an opportunity for us to talk to employers and employees on site and sort of see what their concerns are, what hazards there are. And I don't think we've run a course yet where an employee hasn't come forward with a hazard they're concerned about that they might not have told their employer about yet or might not have mentioned before. So we usually talk about confined spaces, potential entrapment, if there's any sort of working at heights, lockout, tagout, farm equipment, heavy lifting, chemical and pesticide use, anything on farm that they could be concerned about. As far as training, in the last year and a half, we did bring together a lot of online resources, and we're actually working on building out several courses on request of our customers. So we have everything from farm machinery to farm safety awareness to specific online courses. And one that we had asked, one of our contractors specifically requested to have biosecurity training this year for his employees. And what he was concerned about is he's an electrician. He knows farms, he knows how serious biosecurity is, but he wanted something in place to put his employees in as he sort of scales his company. So we built this resource that works very well for contractors coming onto the farm, but it also would work for farm employees if they're new to the industry. From there, we like to go through inspections, and you don't need somebody like me or Josh to come out and do an inspection as long as you've got time, as long as you're going to follow through. So basically walking through any workplace, seeing what the potential concerns are, and even somebody like myself, I can forget or overlook things. So if we look at the telehandler on my farm, I've had it for the better part of a year. I've never driven it on the road. I've got nowhere to go with it, but I've got a neighbor that borrows it. I just realized last month it didn't have a slow moving vehicle sign on it. Something to think about as we sort of go through those inspections. What else could we be missing? Is there any other hazards you haven't talked about with your employees? From there, planning. So the biggest thing is you can identify a hazard, but if you don't assign it to somebody and sort of give them the ability to solve it, it's not going to get finished. And we're going to be talking about it the next time we come out to the farm or the next year we come out to do the training. So planning what areas need to be corrected, what equipment can be repaired or replaced, establishing an order of priority for corrective action. So what are the issues on farm? We don't have to deal with all of them today, but let's make a plan. What are the first 5 or 6 that need to be fixed? And this could be something as simple as you have an old extension cord that's not safe anymore, getting that cut up, get a new one. Just put it on the list and start working through. PPE, this is one thing I sort of like to push back with our farmers on. We have a tendency to invest in equipment quite easily, and then sometimes cheap out on the things that are really good for ourselves. So say something like a full face mask. When I was using my open station sort of skid steer, I would not clean out the barn without a full face mask on. Made it much more enjoyable of a process, much safer, a lot less dust getting sort of breathed in. So look at the PPE you need. When you're mixing acid, do you have everything there that you need to do that safely? Is there any other PPE? Is there any other masks? Anything else to do your job safely and more efficiently? From there, we like to call it the audit. So maybe you've done an inspection on your own farm. Have somebody else come through or another employee walk through with you and triple check that you haven't missed anything or the things that you have identified have actually been implemented. The key is to identify weaknesses in the safety process, outline corrective actions that should be taken to rectify them. Identify what needs to be done and take some steps year by year to make everything better. And then specialized training. This is something we usually touch on in year 2 when we onboard a new customer. Once you have that base training in place, that's really key. That's a great step. But say you've got skid steers or telehandlers, there should be specific training for each of the employees that are operating them, side-by-sides, anything like that, to make sure they're operating it safely. And if this training could stop one employee from running into one concrete wall or catching one feed line or water line off the ceiling, this is a really good investment to make sure to reduce equipment damage or property damage on farm. As far as other training requirements, there should be at least one first aider on every site for every employer. So maybe not immediately year 1, but something to be on your list that you can sort of work through. And from there, coming back and creating policies for everything. So making sure everything's written down, everything's in place. The longer I'm in business, the more I understand why we need policies on all these things, because situations I didn't think would be an issue maybe 5 years ago are now coming to fruition, and you got to write down a policy and procedure on how you're going to deal with those situations and how you're going to make sure to avoid them in the future.